Hi everyone, my name's Anna-Maria and I'm one of the team that run the Buckthorn Cutting Nature Reserve, which is based in Brookmill. So the Nature Reserve is in the middle of the Forest Hill to New Cross railway cutting, which is about 5.5 kilometres long, and we run the section just in the middle. I'm going to talk a little bit about our journey, if you like. So half of the Buckthorn cutting we've looked after under licence to Network Rail for about 4 years. The other half of the cutting is owned by a property developer who wants to build flats on it. So we've got two very different sort of journeys that I'll quickly run through. Just as a background in terms of fighting for green space, in the latter part of the 1800s with urbanisation, the National Trust was born, where people like Octavia Hill fought desperately to save green space. And they fought on the basis that human beings need to be connected with nature. And that it was a fundamental right that everybody should live somewhere where they can connect with nature. One Tree Hill is an example of one of Octavia Hill's campaigns, and the picture there is from 1895 and shows little children being locked out of One Tree Hill where they used to do their blackberry picking. And the guys in the picture are the golfers, because it was all given over to private golfing for a few blokes to run around and play. Anyway, we ended up getting One Tree Hill back through a lot of fighting and a lot of campaigning. Today in 2022, we are fighting again for green space. But it's less to do with human connection, although that is still extremely important, and it's more to do with biodiversity and wildlife. Today, we've got a lack of garden space. People are living in flats with no garden space at all, with barely a window box. So the pressure on parks is huge, whereas once they used to be quite wild and green spaces, they've now got outdoor gyms, play parks, tennis courts, boot camps, everything going on, because it's become a leisure space rather than a wildlife space. The demand for cemetery space is huge. Camberwell New Cemetery, for example, used to be in 1965, it was all green, completely fields and trees, and now there's just a little patch of green where everybody is fighting for space. Driveways and astroturf. People who are lucky enough to have gardens, a lot of them are now turning the front of their gardens into driveways so they can fit their cars, and the back gardens are astroturf because it's easier. A lot of land over the years have been sold off for development. Green space is nice and cheap, so it often gets sold off at auction without anybody in the public knowing, and important green space disappears, such as the Buckthorn cutting. Where we do have some biodiverse, rich green space, often you can't see it and it's locked away. So railway cuttings are a really good example of that. And what usually happens on railway cuttings is people who live along them will chuck their rubbish over. They'll land grab often, and over the railway bridges people will chuck radiators and all sorts of things. And we're on sort of, in 4 years, we're now on skip number 8 of rubbish that we're picking up of other people's rubbish. So there's a lot of stress now, and there's a lot of reason why we're all fighting for green space. Wildlife has been very low down on the pecking order in terms of green space decisions. It's always been green space decisions have always been about sort of leisure and human need. And because of that, we've ended up in a situation where when I was born, we had 10 million hedgehogs in the UK, and now we've got under 1 million. Slow worms are dying out. Where you can find them is along railway cuttings often, because it's a continuous corridor where they can wander freely. And we are basically destroying our biodiversity. So nature recovery is massively important. This is what our nature reserve looked like in 2018. So we approached Network Rail. I pass this every day. And we could see that there might be potential behind that horrible fence. Everything was bramble, everything was rubbish. You can see the amount of rubbish, that was day one. And the little picture on the bottom is evidence of people land grabbing. So the guy who did this, he basically had a 30-foot garden, and he took 200 square foot of garden for himself. So he cleared all the trees, he cleared absolutely everything, and he lawned it, and he put a trampoline up for his kids. And then he threw his rubbish over for us to clear. So this is what we've been dealing with for about 4 years, and it's common. Along railway cuttings, it's very common, because the railway traditionally, their worry is about getting trains on time. They're not too worried about what happens, but that is changing now, because they've got their own biodiversity targets, so it's moving in the right direction at last. These are some of the things we've done in the last 4 years to protect the biodiversity that was there in 2018 and to increase it. So one of the most important things is surveys. So we surveyed habitats, we got a management plan, and we created projects around that management plan. And then we created an infrastructure so that we could do our work. So putting paths in, but the paths are more about us being able to access the space and less about creating paths so people can wander all over the place. Safeguarding current habitats and enhancing. So we removed a lot of bramble in certain places. We've kept it in a lot of places too, because it's important for wildlife. We've removed it from the reed bed that was becoming completely choked with bramble. We removed it from certain assets like gorse and dog rows. And we also found an orchard that was completely covered with bramble and had been forgotten for about 50 years. So we've recently started to restore that. We've created new habitats, so we've introduced ponds, so we've done 3 ponds now. Ponds are unbelievably important for wildlife. Once you put a pond in, everything changes like that. The foxes need the water, the birds need the water, the hedgehog needs the water. You've got mosquitoes for the bats that fly through. So they're incredibly important, but often people fill up the ponds in their gardens because they've got toddlers and it's a bit of a worry. So ponds are disappearing, so we're trying to introduce them as much as we can. We do live hedgerows and dead hedges to attract wildlife, and we're creating spaces of meadow as well for butterflies and bees and insects, and also log piles. So when a tree is dead, we don't take it away. We create habitats there for stag beetles and all sorts. So and we try and reuse everything that we've got on site. Nothing gets chucked except for household rubbish. We also partner with other charities as much as we can. Anyone who knocks on our door or phones us up, we will say yes. If we can help, we help. We have a partnership with wildlife rescuers. So we've got a bird aviary which is for rescued birds. So there's a local rescuer who basically gets birds that have fallen from their nest or they've been orphaned, and she hand rears them at home and then she brings them to us and they stay with us for 4 weeks and then they're released. She does it all for free, we do it all for free, and it's just lovely. It's a really lovely thing to do. We also record and monitor and log everything, which is incredibly important, especially if you've got sites that are under threat of development, because without that wildlife evidence, you're done for really. So every stag beetle, and we've got a great sort of community connection, so all the road will send me pictures of anything they've seen and I log it for them. So if somebody's seen a stag beetle, I get the picture, slow worm, and we got everything through to Green Information for Greater London, which is Giggle. So that's the site that the council use and developers use when they want to put a planning application in, because they have all the evidence of the wildlife. So constantly monitoring and recording absolutely everything we do is very, very important evidence. So this is the nature reserve now, 4 years after what you saw before. As you can see, it's very beautiful and we love it very much. We try and keep it as wild as we can. It's really important to keep it wild, and children, and when we do have visitors there, they just love being in a space like that. It's so different to a park. It's not manicured, it's just lots of secret places and lots of wonderful things to see. At the moment with the kids, we've done a bat walk with a bat monitor, and they're learning to walk in the dark without torches. And these are little 4 and 5-year-olds, and it's wonderful. Builds a lot of resilience, and they take loads of lovely risks in wild spaces. So the other half is the land that the developers have got. So this land we don't have any licence for. This part is called Gornwood. We found the old estates map from 1600, which gave us the name of the wood, its original name. Over on the right, this is some of the stuff the developer has done to destroy it. So cutting down trees and burning the stumps so that they can't grow back, chucking loads of rubbish. It's been a little bit of a nightmare for us. We've got to be constantly vigilant to try and stop him. So with that side, we don't have the kind of access we do at the nature reserve. So a lot of the stuff we do is from a distance, but it's still protecting biodiversity for the future. So one thing we did was look into the history of the site, and we went right back to 1600. We got copies of all the estate maps from when it was owned by Christ Hospital, from Bridge House Estates, from all the different landowners, and we were able to build evidence to prove that it is ancient woodland, and it's the closest ancient woodland to the City of London. So this, what it was seen as wasteland, has now got a designation from Natural England because of the research that we've done. We also try and send off anything we see that's unusual. We try and send it off to experts. There's loads of brilliant experts out there, loads of geeks that are amazing. And we found some really weird stones that we sent off to the London Geological Partnership, and it turned out that these stones are quite special because they are called septarian nodules, and they're associated with fossil horizons. And they're underneath everywhere we are, but normally you don't get to see them. But because we're a railway cutting that's about 90 foot deep, there's a layer of them that you can see that you can't see anywhere else in London. So we got a geological designation assigned to the land, which is another layer to protect it from development. We also sneak over there quite often, and we try and find assets. So we measure the trees and we send the measurements off to the Ancient Woodland, the Woodland Trust. We found what we think is the towpath of the 1805 canal, and we looked at old drawings of how towpaths were cut to try and prove that this cut that we found and the level path is just where the canal would have been. We found a boundary marker that we think was part of Lord Clare's estate back in God knows when. And we found ancient hedgerow trees, and the trees have got pleaches in them that farmers would have made a couple of hundred years ago. So all of this stuff, we've been sort of archaeology sort of detectives in the woodland, and all of it with evidence and taken photos of, and we've sent it to everyone that will listen. Lewisham Council must be sick of me because I'm just constantly, this is evidence, it might look rubbish, but actually it's amazing. Because of all the evidence, well, partly because as part of the local plan that the council are currently putting through at the moment, they are putting a metropolitan open land designation on the whole railway corridor, which is brilliant because that's probably the highest it can get, which is Greenbelt. So if the developer hasn't got the message so far, he'll definitely get the message when that comes through. So, oh, that's me, done. Sorry.